She said the words no man was ready to hear. "Don't fix me," she whispered into the emptiness of the prairie. But the cowboy's heart knew he couldn't walk away. The sun stood high and unforgiving over the prairie, baking the earth, until the grass turned brittle and gold. A lone rider cut across the wide openness, his shadow long and thin against the rolling ground. His name was Eli McGraw, 27 years old, though the wear of hard seasons made him look older. His coat bore dust from days of travel, and his hat brim was sweat-stained. Eli wasn't headed anywhere in particular, just drifting, as he had for the past year, taking odd cattle jobs when offered, sleeping under the stars when not. That morning, he'd thought only of water. The skin slung on his saddle was running low, and the land ahead showed no sign of creek or pond. It was the sort of day where the silence pressed in close, broken only by the creak of saddle leather and the steady clop of hooves. He wasn't expecting to find anyone out there, not this far from any road or ranch, which is why he pulled up short when his horse's ears flicked and Eli caught sight of something near a lone cottonwood. At first, he thought it a bundle of rags, some homesteader's laundry left and forgotten. But then the bundle shifted. Eli frowned, slid down from his horse, and stepped closer. It was a woman. She sat propped against the cottonwood's trunk, wrapped only in a coarse wool blanket. Her shoulders were bare where the cloth slipped, skin pale and bruised. Strands of dark hair clung damp to her tear-streaked face. She looked up when he approached, eyes glassy from pain and exhaustion. For a moment, Eli nearly turned away, not out of callousness, but because he'd seen enough of life's cruelty to know a man could lose himself in it if he wasn't careful. But he didn't move. He couldn't. Her lips parted, voice barely more than a rasp. Don't fix me." Eli's breath caught. The words came so strange, as if she were warning him off, begging him not to meddle in her brokenness. He stood rooted, torn, between respecting her plea and the gnawing truth in his chest, that no decent man could leave her there. "Ma'am," he said carefully, crouching to her level. His voice was low, steady, the way one might speak to a spooked horse. "You need water. You won't last long sitting out here." She shook her head weakly, clutching the blanket tighter. "Don't waste your time." Eli glanced around. No wagon, no camp, no sign of how she'd come to be here. The land stretched empty in every direction, save for his horse. He swallowed hard. "Name's Eli." He tried again. "I don't mean you harm." Her eyes flickered at that, searching his face as if weighing whether he spoke truth. At last she whispered, "Clara." The name hung in the still air, fragile as glass. He pulled his canteen free and held it out. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then, slowly, Clara reached, fingers trembling as she took it. She sipped, coughed, then drank again, the water spilling down her chin. Eli steadied the canteen in her hands until she had enough. When she passed it back, her shoulders shook, though whether from cold or from everything she'd endured, Eli couldn't tell. He wanted to ask her where she'd come from, who'd done this to her. But the words lodged heavy in his throat. Some wounds didn't want questions right away. Instead, he unrolled the extra shirt from his saddlebag and draped it over her shoulders, trying not to notice how she stiffened at his nearness. He kept his hands light, movements slow. "I got a horse," he said softly. "He's gentle. I can take you to town." Clara's eyes filled again, but she shook her head fiercely, clutching the blanket. "No town. No one." Eli frowned. "You'll need shelter. A doctor." "No." Her voice cracked. "Please, just leave me be." The plea cut deep. He could have mounted up, told himself it wasn't his place, that she'd made her choice. But the sight of her, bruised, broken, alone against the wide, merciless prairie, gnawed at him. He had a sister once, back in Arkansas, before fever took her. He thought of her face, how he would have wanted someone to stop, to care. Eli looked at Clara again, at the way the sunlight caught her damp lashes, the raw edge of her defiance even, through tears. "I can't walk away," he murmured, more to himself than to her. Clara turned her face aside, as if she couldn't bear the weight of his words. But she didn't push him further. That silence was enough for Eli to act. He fetched a blanket from his pack, spread it on the ground, and coaxed her onto it so she might lie down easier. She winced with each movement, her body clearly battered. He didn't ask how. Not yet. He just worked careful, keeping his tone calm, telling her what he was doing so she wouldn't be startled. Through the afternoon, Eli stayed with her beneath the cottonwood, fanning her with his hat when the heat grew sharp, giving her small sips of water. Now and then she dozed, though her sleep was troubled, her lips whispering words he couldn't catch. Once she startled awake, clutching the blanket tight, eyes wild with fear. Eli raised his hand slowly, palms out, reassuring. "You're safe," he told her. "Ain't no one here but me." She studied him with suspicion, but his steady gaze seemed to ease her. Slowly, she relaxed again. By late day, Eli knew he couldn't linger there much longer. The prairie cooled quick at night, and without shelter or firewood, Clara wouldn't last. "Clara," he said gently, "there's an old line shack about a mile west. I seen it last week riding through. Roof's half gone, but it'll do better than out here. Will you let me take you there?" Her brow furrowed, torn between refusal and need. Finally, she gave the smallest nod. Eli exhaled, relief washing over him. He saddled his horse with care, then rigged a sling from his bedroll so Clara could ride steadier in front of him. She stiffened when he lifted her, a cry slipping out despite her effort to smother it. Eli's jaw tightened at the sound, but he said nothing, only held her steady until they were both mounted. The ride was slow. Each jolt made Clara grimace, and Eli kept murmuring reassurances, pointing out the land as if small talk could soften the miles. By the time they reached the shack, dusk had begun to paint the sky. The place was little more than 4 walls and a patchy roof, but it was something. Eli helped Clara down, easing her onto a pile of old straw. He built a fire from what wood he could scavenge and set coffee to boil. The smell of it filled the air, mingling with the prairie dusk. Clara watched him from the shadows, blanket wrapped close, eyes weary but wary. At last, she spoke, voice low. "You shouldn't have stayed." Eli glanced at her. "Maybe not, but I did." She turned her face toward the firelight, the flicker revealing the full mark of her bruises. Eli's chest tightened at the sight, but he kept his expression calm. Clara's lips trembled. "If they find me, they'll kill us both." The words hung heavy in the night air, Eli's hand stilled on the coffee pot. The crackle of fire seemed suddenly loud against the silence that followed. The fire crackled low in the line shack, throwing jagged shadows along the rough-hewn walls. Eli sat with his back against the doorway, hat tipped forward, though his eyes stayed open. Sleep wouldn't come easy that night, not after Clara's words. "If they find me, they'll kill us both." The way she'd said it, flat, almost resigned, made the hairs on his neck prickle. Whoever they were, Clara believed them capable of following through. And Eli had learned enough about the West to know that some men, once they set themselves to cruelty, wouldn't stop until they'd wrung out every ounce of it. He shifted slightly, looking across the shack. Clara lay curled near the fire, wrapped in both his blanket and her own wool, her breathing shallow but steady. The bruises on her face caught the firelight in purple-blue patches. For a moment, Eli's mind wandered to his sister again, Lydia, who had died when she was just 19. He remembered how helpless he'd felt watching her waste away with fever, and something in Clara's stillness tugged at that same raw place inside him. Toward dawn, Clara stirred, coughing dryly. Eli poured the last of the coffee water into a tin cup and held it out. She eyed him warily but took it, sipping slow. "You didn't sleep," she murmured. "Wasn't tired," Eli said simply. Her gaze flickered over him. "You keep saying things like that, things that don't explain much." A corner of his mouth tugged. "Never been much for explaining. But I'll listen, if you care to talk." She turned away, staring at the fire. For a long stretch, only the crackle of wood and the faint sigh of wind filled the shack. Then Clara spoke, voice low as if confessing to the flames. "They took near everything. she whispered. My wagon, my mule, my pride, left me out there like garbage. Eli's jaw tightened. He wanted to ask who they were, but something in her tone told him to wait. She wasn't done. Her fingers clenched the blanket. I thought I was strong enough. Thought I could make it west on my own. Find a new start. Foolish, wasn't it? A woman, alone on those trails. Eli shook his head. Not foolish. Brave. Braver than most. Clara's lip trembled. She looked at him then, as if searching. His eyes for mockery, but all she found was quiet steadiness. A tear rolled down her cheek and she brushed it away quickly. I told you not to fix me, she said. But you stayed. Eli leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Sometimes folks don't need fixin'. Sometimes they just need someone to sit with them till the worst passes. Her gaze softened, but the moment didn't last. A noise outside, faint, like a horse shifting, made both their heads snap. Up. Clara stiffened, color draining from her face. They're looking, she whispered hoarsely. I told you. Eli rose silently, moving to the door. He peered into the dim pre-dawn light. Nothing stirred on the prairie, only the grass bending with the wind. He waited long minutes, hand resting on the butt of his revolver, before he turned back. No, on out there, he said. Clara hugged herself tight. They don't give up easy. Eli studied her, weighing whether to push for more. Finally he spoke. Clara, who are you running from? Her silence stretched, heavy as stone. Then she whispered, men who call themselves traders, but they trade in more than goods. They take what they want. They took me. The raw truth of it landed between them like a strike of lightning. Eli felt his throat tighten. He knew enough about such men. He'd seen women dragged into camps, never to walk free again. That she'd escaped at all was near miracle. You're safe now, he said firmly. Her eyes met his, full of sorrow. No one's safe when men like that get a scent. Eli didn't argue. Instead, he stoked the fire higher, as though flame alone might guard them. Later that day, he saddled the horse again. We can't stay put, he told her. If those men are roaming these parts, they'll find the shack. There's a ranch I worked at last winter, about 20 miles east. Good people. They'll help. Clara shook her head fiercely. I can't bring trouble on strangers. You already brought it on me, Eli said, trying to keep his tone gentle but firm. And I ain't sorry for it. Let me take you where you'll have a chance. She studied him long, torn. Finally, she gave a small nod. The journey was hard. Clara was weak, and every mile wore on her. Eli rode slow, stopping often to let her drink or rest. At times, she leaned back against him, trembling from exhaustion, and Eli held her steady, saying nothing. Once, when the prairie wind cut sharp, he wrapped his coat around both of them, feeling her shiver ease just a little. By late afternoon, storm clouds began to gather in the west. Thunder rumbled low. Eli scanned the horizon, searching for shelter. They found a small ravine with scrub trees and decided to make camp. As he worked to build a fire, Clara sat nearby, staring at the clouds. You don't even know me, she said suddenly. Eli glanced up. Don't reckon I need to know. You deserve better than being left in the dirt. Her throat worked, as though his words struck something deep. She wrapped the blanket tighter, blinking hard. That night, rain hammered down, drumming on their meager shelter. Clara curled close to the fire, her eyes shadowed with worry. At last, she whispered, You'll regret this, Eli. They'll come. For me. For us. Eli shook his head. I've lived with regrets plenty. This won't be one. Lightning flashed, thunder rolled, and for a heartbeat, Eli thought he saw movement high on the rim of the ravine. Dark shapes against the sky. He reached for his revolver, heart pounding. But when the next flash came, the rim was empty. Still, he didn't sleep. He sat awake through the storm, hat brim dripping, hand never far from the gun. By dawn, the storm had passed, leaving the prairie fresh and glistening. Clara stirred, groaning softly. She looked at Eli, exhaustion etched deep in her face. You didn't rest? Didn't need to. he said, same as before. But this time she didn't challenge him. She only watched him a long moment, something unreadable in her eyes before turning away. They pressed on eastward. Every step of the horse's hooves seemed to drum Eli's nerves tighter. He couldn't shake the feeling they were being followed. Now and then, he thought he saw a glint on the horizon, a distant dust cloud that didn't belong. He kept it from Clara, not wanting to add to her fear. By evening, they crested a ridge, and Eli pointed. There, that's the ranch. Belongs to the McCulloughs. They'll take us in. Clara's shoulders sagged with relief, but only for a moment, because as Eli urged the horse down the slope, the crack of a rifle split the air. The bullet struck the ground near the horse's hooves, kicking up dirt. The animal reared, Clara crying out as Eli fought to steady the reins. From the ridge behind them came the shout of men's voices, hard, cruel, and closing fast. Clara clutched his arm, terror in her eyes. It's them! Eli pulled her tight against him, spurring the horse into a gallop toward the safety of the ranch. Bullets whined past, men shouting in pursuit. The wide prairie stretched ahead, open and exposed, every stride a desperate gamble. Eli grit his teeth, urging the horse faster. Behind them, the riders gained. Clara buried her face against his chest, sobbing. The McCullough ranch sat just ahead, smoke rising from the chimney, fences and outbuildings dotting the land. Eli prayed they could make it before the riders closed in. The crack of another rifle split the air, closer this time. The horse thundered across the prairie, hooves striking hard against the rain-soaked ground. Eli leaned low in the saddle, one arm tight around Clara, the other gripping the reins with white knuckles. Bullets hissed past, biting the dirt and whipping the air. Behind them, men's voices rose. Jeers carried sharp on the wind. Faster, Eli muttered to the horse, urging with his heels. The ranch lay ahead, a cluster of buildings sturdy against the land, but every stride stretched like a mile. Clara clung to him, trembling, her breath ragged. They'll kill us, she gasped. Not if I get you there first. Another shot cracked, and Eli flinched as splinters of dirt struck his cheek. He risked a glance back. 3 riders, hard-looking men, closing the distance with rifles raised. Their horses were fresh, their faces set with the grim ease of men used to hunting prey. The ranch fence appeared ahead, split rails weathered but strong. Eli spurred his horse harder. As they neared, a figure burst from the barn, a broad-shouldered man with a gray beard, shotgun in hand. He raised it high and fired, the blast booming across the open ground. The riders slowed, wary. Eli drove his horse through the gate, Clara clutching tighter as they skidded to a halt near the barn. The gray-bearded man jogged forward, shotgun leveled. "McGraw!" the man barked, squinting under his hat brim. Eli swung down, easing Clara with him. "Sam McCullough," he said, breathless with relief. "You couldn't have timed better." Sam's eyes flicked to Clara, then back to Eli. "Trouble?" Eli nodded grimly. 3 riders followed us from the ridge." Sam cocked the shotgun. "Then let's see how bold they are." But the men had pulled up on the far slope, watching. One raised his rifle in a mocking salute, then wheeled his horse and retreated. The others followed, their figures shrinking against the wide prairie, until they were gone. Clara sagged against Eli, trembling so hard he feared she'd collapse. He guided her toward the porch of the ranch house, murmuring steady words until Sam's wife, Martha, came bustling out. "Lord above," Martha gasped, taking in Clara's bruised face and torn blanket. "Get her inside, Eli. Sam, fetch clean water." Within moments, Clara was settled near the hearth, wrapped in quilts, Martha fussing over her with gentle hands. Eli stood back, hat in hand, watching the lines of fear ease just slightly from Clara's face under Martha's care. For the first time since finding her, Eli felt a flicker of hope, but Clara's voice broke it. "They won't stop," she whispered hoarsely. "They'll come back." Sam, standing nearby with shotgun still in hand, grunted. "Then let 'em try. McCullough land's seen its share of men like that. They never last long." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "You don't understand. They don't let go. They'll burn this place if they must." Eli stepped closer. crouching so she could see his face. "Then we'll be ready. You're not alone anymore." For a long moment, she searched his eyes as though testing his resolve. Slowly she nodded, though fear lingered in every line of her body. That night, while Martha tended Clara's injuries, Eli sat with Sam at the table. A lantern flickered between them, casting their faces in gold. "You've dragged trouble to my door, Eli," Sam said, not unkindly. "I know," Eli admitted. "But she's been through hell. I couldn't leave her out there." Sam studied him a moment, then gave a slow nod. "Wouldn't have expected you to. Always had that stubborn streak." They fell silent, listening to the wind press against the windows. Eli's hand rested near his revolver, mind replaying the look of those riders, the way they'd held back, not defeated, but waiting. When Eli finally slipped into the small bunk room, Clara was awake, staring at the ceiling beams. He paused at the door, unsure if she wanted his presence, but she spoke, voice soft. "You should have left me." Eli shook his head, moving closer. "That ain't something I could have done." Her eyes turned toward him, glassy with exhaustion. "You don't know what they'll do, what they already did." He sat on the edge of the chair near her bedroll. "Then tell me." Clara's breath hitched. For a long while she said nothing. Then the words spilled, trembling but fierce, as though forced from a place she'd buried deep. "They came at night," she whispered. "I was alone, camped near the river, said they'd trade food for supplies. I believed them. But once they saw I was alone," her voice broke. "They took everything, beat me, left me with nothing but this blanket. One of them said if I made it to town, they'd find me there too." Her tears came hot, silent. Eli's chest burned with rage, though he kept his voice steady. "You survived what they tried to take. That says something about you, Clara. Don't let them decide the rest." She shook her head. "You don't understand. They're men without conscience. The kind no law can touch." Eli leaned forward, his tone low. "Then they'll have to go through me before they lay another hand on you." Her eyes searched his face, as if disbelieving anyone would stand so firm for her. Slowly, her breathing steadied. For the first time, she closed her eyes and let sleep take her. Eli sat watching, the lamplight soft against her bruises. He didn't move until Martha came and urged him to rest. The following days brought uneasy calm. Clara grew stronger under Martha's care, though she seldom left the hearth. Eli kept busy around the ranch, mending fence, hauling water, always with one eye on the horizon. Sam joked that Eli worked like a man who owed rent, but both of them knew it wasn't chores driving him. It was vigilance. On the third day, while Clara sat outside wrapped in quilts, Eli joined her. The prairie stretched golden under the afternoon sun. "You ever think about leavin'?" she asked quietly. Eli raised a brow. "Leavin' where?" "Here, this life. The drifting." He hesitated. "Sometimes. But then I think maybe drifting's all I'm good for." Clara studied him. "Not from what I've seen." Before Eli could answer, Sam rode up fast, face grim. "Dust cloud on the west horizon," he called. "Could be riders." Clara's hand clamped Eli's arm, trembling. "It's them." Eli squeezed her hand gently, then stood, resolve settling heavy in his chest. He looked out across the prairie where the dust rose, faint but certain. "They've come," he murmured. Clara's eyes filled with fear, but behind it, something else flickered. Trust. Eli touched the brim of his hat, jaw set. "Then we'll meet 'em head on." The prairie air turned heavy as the dust cloud grew, curling against the late afternoon sky. From the McCullough porch, Eli counted shapes, 5, maybe 6 riders, moving steady and sure. Whoever they weren't in a hurry. They came with the confidence of men who believed no one could stop them. Clara stood near the door, wrapped in Martha's quilt, her face pale but resolute. She clutched the fabric at her chest as though it might hold her together. Eli saw the fear in her eyes, but he also saw something stronger beneath it, a flicker of steel that hadn't been there when he first found her under that cottonwood. "They won't quit," she whispered. "Not until I'm theirs again." Eli adjusted the revolver at his hip, voice calm. Then they're going to find this place a harder prize than they bargained for. Sam McCullough joined him, shotgun balanced easy in his hands. Fence line gives us cover. Martha's already sent the boy to fetch neighbors, but they'll be slow getting here. Eli nodded. We'll hold till then. Sam glanced at Clara. She stays inside. Clara's mouth opened to protest. But Eli cut in, gentle but firm. Sam's right. You're safe in there. That's all that matters. Her eyes locked on his. Don't die for me, Eli. He gave a faint, crooked smile. Ain't planning on dying at all. Still, her gaze lingered, heavy with unspoken words, before she turned and let Martha draw her inside. The riders reached the far fence line and halted. Dust settled around them. Eli could see them clearer now, hard-faced men, lean from trail, life, rifles slung casual as though they weren't about to do murder. At their center sat a tall man in a black hat, his grin sharp even across the distance. You've got something of ours, he shouted. Eli stepped forward, revolver loose. At his side. She ain't yours, not now, not ever. The man chuckled, low and mean. She was ours the moment we took her. You think hiding her here changes that? Eli's jaw tightened. He raised his voice. You ride off now, and maybe you live to see tomorrow. Laughter broke from the riders, cruel and mocking. The man in black tipped his hat. Bold words, cowboy. Let's see if you can back 'em. He raised his hand and the riders spurred forward. Gunfire cracked. Sam fired first, dropping one from the saddle before the others even reached the fence. Eli's revolver barked, sending another scrambling back. The ranch yard erupted into chaos, horses rearing, men shouting, bullets splintering wood. Inside, Clara pressed against the window, heart pounding. Martha pulled her back, but Clara shook her head. I can't just hide. Outside, Eli moved with grim focus, every shot deliberate. He'd been in scraps before, but this was different. Every time he squeezed the trigger, he thought of Clara, her. Broken voice asking not to be fixed, her eyes begging him to walk away. And he thought of how he couldn't. Not now. Not ever. The fight dragged fierce. Two riders broke through the fence, charging toward the porch. Eli dropped one, but the other leapt from his horse, charging with knife drawn. Sam swung his shotgun, catching the man in the chest. The blast threw him back hard, but in the chaos the man in black had slipped wide, circling toward the house. Clara saw him through the window just as he reached the back door. Fear froze her breath, but instinct pushed her forward. She grabbed the iron poker from the hearth. The door burst open. The man in black stepped inside, grin wide. There you are. Clara's hands shook, but she raised the poker high. Not again, she hissed. He laughed and lunged. Clara swung with all the strength she had left. The iron struck his shoulder, sending him staggering. He cursed, raising his pistol. When Eli crashed through the doorway, revolver aimed square at his chest. Drop it, Eli growled. The man sneered, gun still half raised. You'll never keep her safe. Men like us don't. Stop, Eli's finger tightened. The shot rang loud, echoing through the small room. The man in black dropped where he stood, pistol clattering to the floor. For a heartbeat, silence hung heavy. Then Martha's voice called from the porch. They're running. The surviving riders fled, dragging their wounded, spurring hard into the horizon until only dust remained. Eli lowered his gun, chest heaving. Clara stood frozen, the poker still in her trembling grip. Slowly, Eli stepped closer, gently taking it from her hands. It's over, he murmured. Her eyes filled, tears spilling down her cheeks. She swayed, and Eli caught her, holding her close as sobs racked her body. For the first time since he'd found her, Clara let herself break completely, burying her face against him as though she'd finally found solid ground. Eli held her, through it, saying nothing, just steady as the earth beneath their feet. In the days that followed, quiet returned to the ranch. Neighbors came, helping mend the fence, standing watch for signs of the riders. None returned. The man in black was buried on the edge of the prairie, his grave unmarked. Clara didn't ask for his name. She only turned her face from the place where he lay. Bit by bit she grew stronger. The bruises faded, the tremor in her hands eased. One evening she stepped outside alone, watching the sunset bleed across the wide sky. Eli joined her, standing silent until she spoke. "You should have left me under that tree," she said softly. Eli shook his head. "Couldn't have." She looked at him then, eyes searching. "Why?" He thought long before answering. "Because some folks come into your path for a reason. I reckon you were mine." Her lips trembled, but she smiled through it. The first real smile he'd seen from her. "You didn't fix me, Eli, but you stayed. Maybe that's what saved me." He reached out, taking her hand. She didn't pull away. The prairie stretched endless before them, wild and uncertain, but for the first time neither felt alone in it. And as the sun sank low, painting the land in gold, Clara leaned against him, letting herself believe in tomorrow. The cowboy couldn't walk away, and in the end, it wasn't about fixing what was broken. It was about standing steady until a broken soul found the strength to heal.